This is Mark and Charity's Coffee Podcast.
Mark and Charity Coffee Podcast for Monday, May 30th. Hope you had yourself a great weekend. My wife and I won the weekend.
You did do well this weekend, yes.
We did so much, helping friends put their docks in, hung out with their families, ate dinner on a driveway. Driveway dinner's the best.
It is.
Stand there and just eating stuff. Did gardening, yard work. So we got the notification that we officially won the weekend in the 55 and over category, which is brought to you by Swiss Chalet.
You might have won it. We came in a close second.
You won the
No, you
under
guys
50.
won it for sure. There's no question because we were not nearly as busy. We were a little more relaxed in taking in the weekend.
Right.
Went out for dinner and a movie Friday night. Went and saw Top Gun.
Yep.
Took the kids out for ice cream one night.
Wow.
Enjoyed
Okay.
that.
Well,
Had soccer practice. And that was pretty well it. So it was a nice weekend. And then to come in this morning and start the week off with, I don't even know how to describe it, Mark. I can't just say what it is because that doesn't even come close to.
I don't know. I think just saying it is like.
I don't know. It was the best way to start the weekend. So you come in after an enjoyable weekend and you think, okay, I'm going to start the week off on the right foot. With my co-host and
Monday with Mark.
It's supposed to be a beautiful day, but you know what? Let's get back at it. And then to have you bring me in, not just a gift, but a new pair of shoes.
New pair of shoes.
Comfortable, cushiony, indestructible.
Yeah, you can't break them. They're indestructible shoes. That's what that's how it was sold to me. Friends down the county. Their next door neighbor has an entrepreneurial friend who invented these shoes, made up so many, and they said, hey, you're going up to Prince Edward County. Here's 100 pair. Take them, give them up to the people up there because they're the trendy people.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, a radio guy manages to get a pair or two or three. And I'm going to grab a pair there for charity. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. That was very thoughtful. So, yeah, not only did you win the weekend, you've now won the week. And it's Monday.
Shoes. Yeah.
And it's fantastic. I took a picture of them, by the way, and I put them up on our social so you can see these snazzy shoes. They look like water shoes, but they're...
You're right. They do, but I'm not sure
because they enclose the entire foot. Mm-hmm. And I do believe they're waterproof. They feel like I could wear these in the water.
Yeah, not the same as water shoes.
But they also have a very thick sole, which I think I could walk in as well.
Super comfy.
Yeah.
Really
they're
good.
Wonderful. So thank you. Thank you for
very,
thinking
very
of
welcome.
me and picking those up and bringing them in this morning.
Very, very welcome. So that's what's going on today. But also we want to spend some time on what we consider to be a very important topic. It would have been a week ago. A wonderful broadcaster by the name of Jennifer Valentine out of Toronto made a remarkable video. And with it really bared her soul and discussed abuse that she felt that she had taken at the hands of another broadcaster. And from that, many other women came forward to say that they were also subjected to it. So it's not a news story. It's certainly not a news story in business, but all of them are very important. And I literally watched you last Tuesday because Monday was a holiday when you talked about it. And I said, I think we got to talk about it because even though you're not a part of that particular scenario, a lot of the things that she said resonated with you as a female broadcaster. And I think it's worth talking about. So here's the format, if you don't mind. Can I interview you about it?
Sure.
So that I make sure that we get all of the important things out. Like, for example, even though you can understand everything she talked about, which included verbal abuse. I don't think there was physical abuse, but certainly emotional abuse. Like she was getting nauseous.
Physical in the sense that it was affecting her health.
Oh my
certainly.
gosh.
Not, I wouldn't say physical abuse in the sense that she was getting punched and kicked.
Right.
But certainly things were going on around her that was affecting her physical health.
Right.
Which I think is a type of physical abuse, certainly.
And neither one of us are privy to that situation, so we're not going to talk about the veracity of all of that. But why did that, and I'm going to use the word trigger you to say, boy, a lot of what she talks about is fear you have, whether you've gone through it or not. Why is it that had such an effect on you?
That's a very good question, Mark. I didn't even realize it had triggered me.
That's why it surprised me.
Until we were talking about it more, until I spoke to you about it last week. Because when I first watched it, I was so taken aback by her video telling her story. I I really didn't know why, because I hadn't been through what she's been through specifically. But yes, when you say, why did it trigger me? Because it's hard, because I've been in that atmosphere.
Okay.
I suppose. I've been in that environment. Right. I recognize what she's talking about. And I didn't even know what had triggered me until you pointed it out to me. It affected me. I felt it. Yeah. I really, it stayed with me. And it's still, even now, talking about it again, I can feel it coming back. I guess because I have been in that environment. I've felt the way she's felt to some degree. Right. I think a lot of women in this industry have.
And I'm not going to ask you to get into specifics about it, but something that you said before, like, for example, what is it about broadcasters, and she brought it up too, that as soon as a woman gets pregnant and becomes mom, everything changes. And you said that you always have that in the back of your mind. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. And I've spoken to you about that perception that I feel. And it's funny because I can't say that anything has ever been said outwardly or been done directly to me to necessarily make me feel that way. I just feel that way, that I almost have to work harder to prove that because I'm a mom, I can still do my job, as though that's a knock against me, which is unfortunate. And it does frustrate me and make me angry that as a parent, I now have to prove that I'm still capable of working. I can't do both. There have been times where I felt that my family, if I do show, I don't want to say favoritism, but if something comes up at home and I have to deal with that, it's almost a sign to say to my employer that, oh, well, there she goes. Oh, we can't rely on her. And that's how I feel. And again, it's not from any one occurrence or something that's happened. I just feel that. And I think I've been conditioned that way, to be honest. I think it's just, a couple has a baby. The man is thought, okay, now you're a breadwinner. You're going to work harder at work. And we know that. The woman, oh, you're just going to want sick days all the time when the kids are sick. Well, now she can't cover her. Yeah, we can't rely on her. Exactly. She can't have the same responsibilities, or it's going to be harder for her. So we can't rely on her as much, or suddenly things have changed. And it does. I'm not saying it doesn't. As you know, as a parent, things do change when you have a family. Yeah. There's no question. But it's almost in this industry, I think a woman's role on air when it comes, and I'm speaking more as an example for Jennifer Valentine because she was part of a morning show, and typically a woman's role on a morning show in radio has been secondary. Right. You always have the male lead, and then the female co-host, and then maybe some other players. So you're already secondary to begin with, and then you have a family. And it's not that you drop down further, but it almost cements that mentality. Yeah. So it comes with its own ceiling. Exactly. Exactly. And it's And since you brought it up too, I mean, she was well aware of her quote unquote role in there. Yeah. And I would say most of us are. We know what role we play. No, but I'm saying that the accused in this case made it no uncertain terms what her role was. Yeah, he took it in a very negative way. Remind her. Yes. That you're overstepping your bounds and whose show it is to believe what we have heard. Do you feel that way? Do you feel that way with you and I? No, gosh, no, never have I ever felt that way. Because that's not what I want to do. I am appalled as a guy, and I'm certainly not going to be about me, when I heard about that and other broadcasters had said, oh, well, it was kind of a known secret among radio. And that really made me angry because one of the things that would, to use the word trigger again, I hate using that word, but it's my new word. Yeah. That would trigger him is if, he had the idea of where the story was going to go. And if she added something or took it in a different direction, that he felt that he was being sabotaged or that he was being ambushed and that didn't, that's my show. And he would get in her face and scream. And I don't know if I'm putting words, but that was the whole idea. But you and I laugh about the rabbit hole. For me, if I have something and you add it and take it in a different direction, every once in a while, and you'll even say, sorry, I guess that wasn't what we want. But the other 10 times, it was better. Because it was spontaneous.
I'm glad you feel that way.
But isn't that what we want in live radio? So I've said it before when I was a program director, when I was a teacher. I think the worst radio station in the world or the worst radio show in the world is the one where I get all the say. Because it's only as good as I can make it. What's the point of having two people in the room? If it can only be as good as I can make it, then the other person in the room is worthless or useless. Like, if we're just going to do what I do, what are you supposed to do? Laugh at something that isn't funny? Like, what is your role supposed to be if you aren't the other intelligent person having the conversation?
That's what you hope for. But
yeah.
You know as well as I do, in this business, there are egos and there are people like control freaks.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you're already like that, you can be in an environment where you're just encouraged, which I believe has happened in this case. Because as you said, this particular person that she worked with and has a long history of behaving this way. And it was made okay. The higher's up knew about it. And instead of firing him, instead of penalizing him in any real way, they penalize their co-hosts. And as we're hearing, it's not just the women, though in this case, it's focused on his female co-hosts and the females he's had to work with, because the treatment is just abhorrent. But it was accepted. And that's the part that really, I think, triggers, is because, and I know that media and radio is not really any different from any other industry, but that behavior was accepted. And and as a woman, you just knew, fine, yeah, whatever. This is how he is. This is what the situation's like. This is what's going to happen. And again, it's that control and that ego. And when you've been given it for so long and it's okay, that's the way it is. And he said that to her. You can cry all you want. It's not going to make a difference. This is my show. You're just here.
2 years she worked with him. One co-host lasted 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks. And it was known and accepted. And the other side of that, if we don't mind getting into this, oh my gosh, I don't want to be too personal, but I do want you to say, because you're not alone and this industry is not alone, is you get to an expiry date. You get to a best before date as a woman. Far more, like, I am 59 years old. I don't know how many 59-year-old women are still on the air. Why is that? Do you worry about that?
Not at this stage. Give me another. I'd say give me another 10 years. I hope to still be doing this in 10 years.
Sure, of course you do.
Because I love it and I enjoy it. And
we get good at it finally.
Well, right? You kind of come into your own, I think, of it at that point. But again, going back to Jennifer Valentine, that she mentions that too, because she was in TV, and that's kind of what transitioned her into radio, is because at 34, she wasn't young enough to be on TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now she is in her 40s, and some would say she might even be pushing the envelope with radio. But yeah, we do reach an expiry date. I think that's kind of a given too, unless you're Marilyn Dennis. Yeah. As we like to say. And she's the exception.
That's right. She's the exception that proves the rule. As soon as everybody says,
she's the only one I can think of.
Oh, there's no such thing as that. Look at Marilyn Dennis. That's because there's one, it excuses all of the others.
Exactly.
Because there aren't so many. I reached out to a female broadcaster that I know from a long time ago. She did television, very talented. And I said, because I'm thinking, boy, I hope I never treated her like that. I hope I didn't. And I said, did you ever go through it? And she said, not like Jennifer Valentine did, but she said, it's funny. She said, I'd go in for the TV show and somebody would just laugh about how she's having a bad hair day. And she says, I never commented on my male co-host's hair. She said things like that. And she did begin to think in the last year of the TV show before it got canceled that she just kind of got a feeling. It was never said. Nobody ever said anything. But as you say, in the back of my mind, she can hear a clock ticking. Like, here I am now in my 40s. How long are they going to want me to do it?
Well, and to go back to the baby, when I started to have kids, and I had forgotten actually about this until last week when we were talking all week long. But I did have a coworker say to me, and he was walking behind me down the hall, and I was big. I was maybe 7 or 8 months. And he said, it's such a shame, Charity, such a shame that you're pregnant.
Wow.
And he meant a few different things because of that.
Yeah.
Number one, I'd be off the air. I'd be away for so long, but also my physical appearance as well, and the toll it would take on my body.
Yeah.
And as you just said, it's kind of, and I'm sure as this woman pointed out too, you laugh it off and you keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to make it clear, I have never experienced anything Jennifer Valentine has.
Mm-hmm.
And other women I've worked with have come forward with their horror stories. One woman in particular I worked with when I was just starting out who ended up in Ottawa, and she did suffer physical abuse from her co-hosts. And nobody knew, it wasn't out there. It's out there now. I've never experienced that. I've never experienced any sort of, it's never been that bad. But, of course, there's always that element of...
well, why should it be in the back of your mind?
I don't even know how to put it into words.
Yeah.
There have been moments of uncomfortableness. There's been those awkward moments, those where you just laugh it off and keep going.
But you want to die or you want to get mad?
Both.
Both? Yeah.
Where you're embarrassed and you feel awkward and you start to question yourself. And those moments of I don't even know how to put it. It's not a very nice feeling. And I guess that's what the trigger is. It's taking you back to those moments. And it was when I was starting out. So I think back now and I think, wow. And I do think about my kids. And even though I have boys, I think about them entering the workforce. And if they ever said to me, I want to do radio, Mom, even as young men coming in, there's that part of me that feels like, oh, are they like, even now, I can feel it on my chest.
No, I know.
It's not that I don't want them to experience it. I just question what kind of experiences are they going to have. And I think back and I wonder if my parents knew about some of the situations I had been in and conversations I had had and remarks made when I started out at 21 years old, how they would feel. And these were grown men. These were men that were married with families, the majority. And yeah, it's a fun business. There's a great side to this industry, but there's also, people like to push the envelopes.
Yeah,
as we
and
both know.
the sideline that nobody knows outside of the industry. Like, for example, we always hear female lawyers, it's tough to make them partner because they have a family, because, it's so many out. There are corresponding businesses that have their own ceilings. We're not saying that radio is unique at all. But one of the things that, and Jennifer alluded it to, is that people believe in this industry that female co-hosts are interchangeable.
Yep.
That as long as Mark's there, because I've worked with 4 co-hosts. So if anybody...
You go through them like shoes, Mark.
We laugh about it, but if somebody wanted to, they could look at it and say, oh yeah, it's his, they can just bring somebody in, or that's what they think. Oh, he thinks he can just work with anybody because
Typically the male has a longer...
Typically, that's right.
A longer career.
But again, I was there with Laura, but then she went off and did television. And then Kathleen and I were 7 years. Ingrid and I were 9 years. You and I will do 20 years.
But that's not because you were inappropriate or
no, but that's my point.
Or any of that with them. It's just careers shift and change, and that's fine. That's the way of life. I'd say everybody. What is it? A person will go through how many careers in their lifetime? There's a stat. Yeah,
5. Yeah,
that's the difference,
I got 4
Mark.
more
You're
coming.
Not what is being exposed.
But
by
people
these
don't
women.
realize, like when they listen to you, and like we had a listener this morning that calls you by name. Like
which I love.
You're known. So people have a perception of what it's like to be you on the air. People don't know that in the back of your mind, this industry tells you that you're not as important as I am and that you can be replaced simply because we'll get a different woman. And I think that's so abhorrently horrible. Horrible.
But as we talked last week too, as the spotlight it's shining on our industry at the moment.
And it should.
I think this is we've seen it in different industries. And I think it is across the board. I think it happens everywhere. Of course it does.
It does.
But at this particular time, it is shining on something that's near and dear to our hearts. And again, that's, I think, why I was so connected to it last
and
week
it's
as well.
And we're not worse than other industries, but we're different in that you do it publicly. Like if you're not on if it happened to you, people would say, "Oh, what happened to Charity?" What would I say? She couldn't work with me anymore because she's suing me for harassment. You're right. Like it's not worse, but it's different. And it's that feeling that people love to be in radio because it's egotistical, that there are some companies or program directors or whatever who use that to say, you won't quit. You love this too much, so I can treat you any way I want. Or I can get, or I believe that if I really challenge you that way, or it's not right, and that dangling of the famous as they think what will make it work, or why people will put up with it because they want that radio show.
It kind of feels like we're finally catching up a little bit.
I believe we are. I kind of felt that. I believe that way.
I felt that last week. It was kind of like, okay, now the light has shifted, and we're going to focus on this, because we saw it with the CBC a few years ago with Jumon Gomeshi, and that again was something. Yeah. Even more horrible, and people couldn't believe it. What's being discussed now, for sure. But yeah, I think it's just our turn. It's kind of like, okay, now let's shift the media, all of it, including radio. Like, I don't want Emily to go through that. Like, Emily's a young broadcaster right here on 95.5. Like, what's her career going to be like in 20, 25 years? And is it going to have its own ceiling because of her gender? Yeah, but she's already put in what? How many? And I don't want to focus on Emily by any means. She can talk for herself or speak for herself. And that's the example in my mind. But to be honest, Mark, and the scary part is, who knows what her experiences have been so far? True. See, yeah. Like, honestly, as I said, I was 21 when I started working. No, when was my first full-time job? I was 20 years old. And it wasn't in Toronto, but it was the GTA. Mm-hmm. And it was like a whole other world. You take the small town girl and put her in the outskirts of Toronto working. With a bunch of creative people. Yeah. And it was wonderful. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. There were some great people that I worked with and some great experiences. But it was eye-opening. And that's where it started. And it was kind of like, okay, so this is how it is. This is the game. Let's go. This is the game. And I was, again, thankfully, and I'm grateful for it, I was watching from the outside, because there were other women who had been there for quite a few years. And I would say they'd been in the game a while. Yeah. So it's created some very interesting conversations, and certainly brought out feelings I didn't realize I had. Yeah. But also in others like yourself and others in the industry. Well, I applaud you for sharing. Thank you. I don't know what I shared other than I can feel it. I can relate. I can, in some degree. Yeah. And, I empathize. Yeah. Certainly. Okay. Well, I appreciate it. So that's a heavy Monday. It is a heavy Monday. I think it's an important one. So we appreciate that. Mark and Charity Coffee Podcast. Join us tomorrow morning. Jimmy Hollywood's going to be back from his Memorial Day weekend. And tomorrow on the podcast, we'll talk more about how much you like Top Gun Maverick. Not the greatest. I think he overshot a tad. He does. That's what Jimmy does. By saying the greatest action film of all time. Ever. It was really great. Yeah. The greatest, I don't know. Yeah, why couldn't you just say it's a really great movie? It's still Tom Cruise. Yeah. So I don't know if I can say the greatest. Yeah. But it was really good. So help that with a Take Home Tuesday. And we're also going to talk about the fact that Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush is #1, again, on iTunes because of its inclusion in Stranger Things Season 4. Mm-hmm. When else has that happened? It's happening a lot. Old songs get grabbed. You look at Guardians of the Galaxy, and best soundtrack all of ever. These songs come flying out. What's your favorite example? Put that up on our socials. We'll tackle that list coming up tomorrow morning. So Mark and Charity Coffee Podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, from Spotify to Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Join us tomorrow morning here on 95.5 Hits FM in Belleville. Enjoy your Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning.